Welcome back, friends and family. I'm glad to be back with you. Of course, you gave me a little bit of a break last week, and I greatly appreciated that. As many of you will know, I got to spend some time with my biological family in Texas, and while the travel can sometimes wear a person out, I was certainly grateful to get some of that much needed overdue time with parents, even grandparents, and I know I'm very fortunate to still have them, and of course friends, cousins, and everybody in between. But I'm glad to be back here, back home with you. And this last Sunday, I reflected a little bit on this kind of reconciling, bringing together process that I believe our faith calls us to participate in. The Apostle Paul, in the passage from which I preached, is trying to highlight the ways in which the ministry he is espousing and living into is one that does not seek to offend or alienate, but rather bring people in. And in fact, he stresses that he and those with whom he is working go to great lengths to ensure that people are not being left out or excluded or alienated. I can only imagine the headache and the frustration that must have occurred occasionally, because when you try so hard and things inevitably still run afoul, it can be disheartening. I think we as a community of faith run into those same problems. We do our best to make sure everyone feels welcomed, loved, supported, and nurtured, and then sometimes, outside of our control or our efforts, things happen for people, and maybe something happened and they don't feel. And so it requires diligence on our part, but it also requires a bit of humility, and it always requires grace, because we always have to be mindful. And we have to almost assume that there is somebody out there or in here that feels left out. And so I hope that it sensitizes us the way that it appeared to sensitize Paul. Christianity, Christian faith and life is a process. We don't have a finish line that we cross and say we've run the race. Now you might get to do that one day, but while you are living, you have not finished the race. It is a journey. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And so every opportunity we get to do a little bit better, I believe not only are we called to, but we get to. There's something to rejoice in that fact that we get to improve, we get to grow, we get to do things a bit better, we get to learn how to improve what we have done and are doing and what we want to do. And I think whenever you stop growing, that's a real sad day. So we as the church are continuing to grow, evolve, and change based on the needs that are communicated to us from those that are inside of our community and those from without. I spoke specifically on Sunday about the way in which the covenant that has been built with our ancestors and the covenant that we are invited into is like a treaty. And a treaty is a kin-making ceremony. It makes us family in a very special way. Not a way that entails biology, but in a way that allows spirit to truly foster what I believe God wants for us, which is that beloved community that everybody is called to be a part of and participate in. Now, Paul is making an effort in his writings to the community in Corinth to advocate for a way of Christ, a way of vulnerability and relationship that is contrasted implicitly and at times explicitly with the Roman way. Now, Paul and many of his hearers or readers of these letters would have known the Roman way. The Roman way demands conformity. It demands right belief, right practice, and it also demands that one live into a certain form of piety. One should practice a certain way. You see, it was very restrictive and prohibitive. That was the Roman way. It was carried out by the Roman authorities, and as Rome found its way into the church, and the church found its way into the bosom of Rome, ultimately those two ways combined, and the implicit authoritarian dictatorial ways of Rome found their way into church structure. And I think we are still working to disentangle that movement in our history from what I believe we are called to do by the relational one, by the human one, by Jesus, who was, after all, sentenced to death by that same Roman authority, by that same power. It's important that we remember that. So, Paul presents a different kind of way, a way that entails risk, a way that doesn't pretend that it can control or manage. At best, it can persuade or invite, and it is never going to take power in order to dominate and coerce, because that would not be faith. That would not be the love of Christ. It's tempting. It's tempting as a citizen of this nation or any nation. It's tempting as a part of this world to want to take power just momentarily so you can right the wrongs and make things better. But inevitably, whenever that happens, you fall victim, right, to the hubris and arrogance that goes hand in hand with that kind of power and coercive attempt. We instead are called to do the more difficult job, which is to trust, to love, and continue to be open to relationship. We don't know what 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years from now will look like, but we do know that if we continue to walk in the footsteps of Christ and live as we are called to live, that relational, vulnerable, open way is going to bear fruit in ways that we can't now see and can barely even imagine. So I invite you to trust with me, to journey with me, and let us go together, hand in hand, walking, running, dancing, and singing into this new world, which we must trust is emerging even now. I look forward to seeing you next week as well. Don't forget, Sunday, 10:30. See you there.